Well, as we're waiting, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. A little bit warmer outside, so that's good news. I'm going to try to do this without a microphone, so if I need to speak up a little louder, please let me know. Or if some of you that are in the further reaches want to move down a bit, okay. It's great being in an auditorium like this. The acoustics are fantastic, so makes life a little bit easier. And here comes my water, which I appreciate.
Okay, you're all set?
I am all set. I think we're good. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. All right, today we have Desire to Learn with us. I'm Mark Bagley and whoever is on the other end of the phone. Take it away.
Well, thanks, Jim. And good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Mark Bagley with Desire to Learn. I'm going to be recording this session so that it can be made available for anybody that wants to follow up with more specific viewing, or maybe somebody can't make it today. So let me just do that little bit of housekeeping and say record meeting. And then I'm going to put up my PowerPoint. So joining me today is David Hulk, and David is a solutions engineer. He's in our corporate office in Ontario. I'm actually based in Detroit, so I work with schools throughout Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, as they're making their LMS selection, and really glad to be here today. What we're going to do in the next 90 minutes or so is give you an overview of the Desire to Learn solution. I'm going to start off with a relatively short PowerPoint, maybe 15 minutes or so, just kind of giving you a little bit of background about the products and how we position our products against the other companies that are out there. And then David's going to provide a demonstration of the software. I know we are kind of allowing some time at the end for Q&A, and we're happy to do that. But if you have questions as we're going along, feel free to ask those, because more than likely we'll be in that particular spot, and so your question may be pertinent to that particular area. So just kind of makes sense to have you ask those questions as they come up. So if you're not familiar with Desire to Learn, our company has been around 14 or 15 years now, based in Kitchener-Waterloo area, just about an hour west of Toronto. But today we've grown over those 15 years to a relatively large-sized company with about 800 employees, with offices all around the world, of course in Canada and the United States, but also in areas like Brazil, Hong Kong, Australia, Europe. So we've become an international company over that time. Today we have about 800 employees and about 950 clients, but growing all the time. I've been with Desire to Learn about just over a year and a half, and when I started we had about 500 employees. And so over that short period of time we've grown tremendously, as you can see. I've actually been with other learning management systems in the industry. I started with Angel Learning back in like 2007. Was there when they we were acquired by Blackboard, and stayed with Blackboard for about a year, and also worked for Pearson for a couple of years with their solutions. So have a pretty good feel for the industry in general and the other companies. One of the things that I think is really unique to Desire to Learn is that 98% retention rate that we have. When I was with Angel, we used to brag about a 94% retention rate, which was good, but this is really excellent. And I think there's probably two reasons to that. Number one, we consider our clients to be our partners in this effort. So we're really geared after the sale to make sure that you're successful. You'll be assigned a project manager who will work with you through the implementation process. You'll be assigned an account manager who will be with you through the life of your contract to make sure that you're up to date on things, be there to address any issues that come up. So we really look at this as an ongoing relationship. Secondly, we're always looking for input from our customer base as to new capabilities within the product. So we have formal and informal processes in which you can give us recommendations on things you'd like to see, and then we start working on those as we build them in. So really kind of a hand-in-hand approach to moving forward. We think we're a little bit different than some of the other providers out there, in that we're beyond just kind of a standard learning management system, which basically provides an opportunity for instructors to put content out there on the web, and then students go out there and consume that content we consider it to be much more of a individualized approach. So today, we're providing tools that allow the system to be both personalized and perceptive to the individual user. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that has to do with things like predictive analytics that are part of the system that allow the system to kind of determine what's most likely to be appropriate for this type of user and how they're interacting with the content. We also have adaptive learning that allows for individualized learning paths for students. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But then also, we want technology that is pervasive throughout the entire time that a student is using the learning management system. So we understand that students today are out there doing internships, they're doing experiential learning, social learning, certainly mobile access is becoming more and more important. So all of our technologies and our system overall are built to be pervasive to that user, no matter where they may be. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So together, we've created what we call the Integrated Learning Platform. And that is a set of learning technologies that all use a common database and all use a similar interface and are all highly integrated with each other. We're going to spend most of our time today on what we call the learning environment. That's our learning management system. But it's also important to note that we have these other systems that are available that truly are integrated and pull from the same database of the learning environment. So just a few examples. We provide a lifelong e-portfolio. You might be familiar with the term e-portfolio. That's a system in which students could add digital artifacts or digital representations of their work, not just in an individual course, but over their entire program or their entire time at the school. And then instructors can use that for assessment purposes, or students could use those artifacts to kind of repurpose them and present them to external audiences, such as for job-seeking purposes or maybe graduate studies somewhere. So we provide that as part of an integrated part of our learning environment. If a student is submitting an assignment and also wants to put that digital artifact into the e-portfolio, there's a real easy way to do it. They just click on a button and it also goes into the e-portfolio. But we've added a lifelong component to that. We have something now we call My Desire to Learn that becomes available to your students even after they graduate. And so when they graduate from John Carroll, all the elements in their e-portfolio can be exported out to My Desire to Learn. It's then a cloud-based solution that they can access wherever they're at. They don't have to be a student anymore at John Carroll. And they can continue adding artifacts to that and using the tools to present that to external audiences. So it's part of our pervasive technology, lifelong learning, to make it available anytime, anywhere. We also provide a learning object repository. And again, somewhat familiar term within the industry. This is an area in which instructors can take learning elements and put them in a shared, common environment where they can manage those or make them available to colleagues. It's very common that we see, for example, a Department of Management have a learning object repository where any great tools that one teacher may be using, great simulations or great PowerPoint, can then be shared by other instructors. So you might see a variety of learning object repositories around a campus being shared by the sciences group and then the business group and then others as they're wanting to do that. Now, we can take that even a step further. You might have an entire master course that you want other instructors to gain access to. Maybe it's an introduction to economics. That is just a great course, and you want all instructors to use that same material. You can take that and put it into the learning object repository as well. When the instructor is looking to actually create their course, they can simply copy those elements from their master course into their specific course, or they can link to it dynamically so that if any of the original content changes, they automatically get those updated changes within their course. So it's a great tool just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and presenting the best content available. We also have another facet of this, and that is we know that there's a ton of open educational resources that are out there, often known as OERs. So organizations like the Smithsonian Institute, Merlot is a very well-known one, makes content available for schools to bring into their courses and kind of leverage that publicly open content. Through our Learning Object Repository, you have the ability to do federated searches of that content. And when you see something that you like, you can simply pull it into the system using the repository. So a great tool, both for sharing and accessing open educational resources. Any questions about that, or is that fairly clear? Okay. One thing we're not going to spend a lot of time on today, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of this, and that is we make an analytics insights tool as well. And what this analytics insights, or insights for short, allows you to do as an institution is gain a better understanding of how your students are doing, not just in a course-by-course basis, but across an entire institution or an entire school. So you may, for example, want to do some analysis as to the grades that your students are getting in a particular curriculum and compare that to past student grades or maybe other institutions' grades. But we take it a step further. We also provide within the learning environment the ability to create competencies and learning outcomes associated with specific programs or the entire school. So you might have a competency for John Carroll University that each student must have a sense of community, and you've got various ways in which to measure that. You can create that as a competency throughout the entire program for every student. And you may take select materials from their e-portfolio that maybe they've contributed there, or maybe they've taken a social sciences course and there's some things you want to contribute there, and all that would roll up into that competency. Or maybe more specific. Let's say there's a set of standards in physics that you want your students to attain. And so those courses may be several courses that show competency in that learning outcome. But through this capability, you can pull specific assessments from a variety of courses. They roll up into that physics competency, and you can measure that student performance by that. So our analytics tool basically allows you to do that measurement and that reporting of various types of metrics to kind of see where your students are at. Again, this is not part of our core integrated learning platform, but it is a tool that I think is important that as your needs grow as an institution, to know that these tools are there and readily integrated with your learning management system. We also make a variety of mobile applications and tools. All of our mobile applications are free, both for the institution and the student. I'm going to go into more detail about those in a second. And we also provide a lecture capture solution. So we see a lot of schools today wanting to do what's known as the flipped classroom, getting students the basic lecture before they even get to the class, and then once they're in the class, the instructor has more time to do more in-depth work with those students, simulations, labs, those kinds of things. So our lecture capture solution is, again, fully integrated back into our learning management system. It allows the instructor to set up a recording device at a lecture hall similar to this. They can have both the live picture of them in the front of the lecture hall and anything that they have on their computer simultaneously going into the system and being recorded. It can be used either in a live streaming format, so for a live course, the instructor can do it that way, or if you want to record that, it can be recorded and then either used by itself from a portal that we provide, or it can be integrated into the course. So let's say that instructor wants to just take a 10-minute snippet out of their lecture, put it into the online course. That would be very easy to do, and again, it's all just easily accessible from one system. Any questions about that? Yes.
Question,
sure.
Regarding that capability, are there any limits on sizes of video, both within an individual one and overall?
Well, we actually do have some size limitations, but those are fairly high limits. If you were doing just a ton of recording and needed to get some additional storage, then there's a small fee for storage, but that certainly could be worked out. But we base our limits on what we've seen other universities do and other institutions, other instructors. So I think we're fairly liberal with how much storage we're providing. We can explore that issue specifically if you want to find out how much you might be using and what we're providing. We can certainly look into that further. Yes?
Is there editing software in that program as well for that, or?
There is. Yeah, so the editing software is part of it. I should mention also that the software license also allows you to create video lectures right from your laptop. So most laptops or desktops have a camera built in. And if you wanted to just use it for, say, a 5-minute instructional piece that you want to put into a course, rather than go into a large lecture hall to do that, you can just do it right from your computer, edit it, and put it into the course. So it's very flexible, and really it's not set up to be necessarily a large lecture hall situation. It could be many different use cases for it. Okay. Another thing I wanted to mention about this integrated learning platform that we have is not only the software applications that are kind of front-facing for the user, but also the technologies that are kind of on the back end. We create a technology that we call the Desire to Learn Valence. Basically, it's a set of open APIs, or application programming interfaces, that allow our system to connect to other systems that are out there. So if you're using things, obviously, like Banner for your student information system, that would be one area of integration. If you're using platforms designed by some of your publishers and you want to be able to get information back and forth there, these tools in the back end of our system allow for that connection. We also adhere to all of the major standards in the industry. So you may have heard of some like LTI. I think it stands for Learning Technology Integration. Most of the major software companies today that do anything for e-learning all abide by LTI so that we can exchange data and information back and forth. So we're kind of right in the middle of all those common standards that all of the systems use to make sure there's information available back and forth. So I mentioned student information systems, certainly publisher content, and even that area is evolving quite a bit. It used to be just a simple single sign-on to a publisher's platform. But now we can take grades back and forth. We can see how long a student has been on a particular system in that publisher's platform. So a lot higher level of integration than we used to have. And then we realized there's probably third-party applications that you're using, maybe for Turnitin, for example, that you may be using to check for students, making sure that you're not copying materials, or Respondus, that's a lockdown browser for quizzing. So all those kinds of standard academic technologies we also do integrations with. Any questions about that? Okay. One of the things that is really unique for us in terms of how you can set up the organizational structure of your learning management system is that different departments or different schools or colleges can have totally different setups, even though you're under one large umbrella of John Carroll University. So if the School of Business and the College of Arts and Science want the system to perform differently or act differently with their student constituency, you can set it up that way. And that could be anything from the branding and the look and feel of the systems to the rights and permissions that individual users have. So a student in arts and science might have different sets of roles and permissions than a student in the College of Business. And it also applies to what type of tools you may want in each sub-organization. So in business, maybe they want to have discussion forums, and maybe in arts and science, they don't want to have that, so they can simply turn that off in their organization. So that flexibility is really unique in terms of how each sub-department or college or school within the campus might decide to use the system. So again, the learning environment is what we call the learning management system, and that's the kind of the main area that we're going to focus in on today. There are a few things I wanted to mention there. First of all, the ease of migration from your current system. We've been working with Jay Tarsis. Is Jay here? Tarby, thank you. Hi, Jay. In taking some Blackboard courses, bringing them into a sandbox environment that we've set up, and they move in very easily, doesn't take much time. So you can be assured that as you're transitioning from one system to the other, that the migration path will be very smooth. We also have some unique capabilities in our system, and we'll show those during the demo, but just as an example, we have conditional release of information. So as an instructor, you may decide that you don't want to release week number 2 to the students until they've successfully completed week number 1. So you can set up a little release condition there that they only get the second week's information if they've successfully completed a week 1 quiz. It could be something where for those that achieve, say, less than 70% on a quiz, should get some remedial information rather than moving on to the next module. You can set it up that way. So lots of flexibility there. You're going to see a tool in our HTML editor or our WYSIWYG editor where you are typically going to be in there creating content. A tool in there called Insert Stuff. And Insert Stuff allows you to insert any type of multimedia into that particular area that you may be working in to create content. So that could be a syllabus, it could be a piece of, or a part of a quiz, and maybe you want to refer to some media there. And so this insert Stuff allows you to go out and get YouTube videos or any videos that you've stored in the lecture capture area, or if you're using any kind of video streaming technology like Kaltura or ShareStream, all of that can be there in Insert Stuff. We'll show that to you as we go through the demo. I mentioned the competencies and learning outcomes. That's available throughout. We have a real cool area called Video Note that if you as an instructor just want to create, say, a 30-second or a 60-second video instruction for your students or maybe some feedback on an exam, there's an area called Video Note that allows you to do a quick video. So a little bit different than that lecture capture, which is a little bit more longer type videos. So Video Notes, quick and easy. We also have within each course what we call Analytics Essentials. So as an instructor, you can go in and view specific analytical metrics of how your students are doing within that course. Could be things like how often are they logging in, what are their grades, how are they doing against learning objectives, and we'll show you that during the demo. And then one other real key thing is something that we've acquired in 2013 and have now integrated into the system called Wigio. The WIG stands for Work in Groups. It's kind of an ad hoc collaboration tool that at any moment a student or an instructor can decide to access Wigio and create a small group interaction that would include things like shared video conferencing tool, a shared conference line type of tool, shared calendar, shared workspace. So for students that are doing small group collaboration or instructors that want to get a small group together to talk about something, it's a great tool for that. We even allow it to be used outside of a course scenario. So let's say you have a marketing group, a student marketing group, and they want to be able to use a tool like this for some group collaboration. It's totally open and available to students to do that. So we'll show you a demo as we go through this a little bit further. Let me talk about the mobile capabilities briefly. Number one, as I mentioned, it's all free. The way that you would access the learning environment is through any mobile web browser. So it doesn't have to be Apple specific, Android specific, Windows specific. Any mobile web browser will be able to access the M-site for the learning environment. So you've got complete access there. In addition to that, we do make some specific applications for both instructor and student productivity that are specific to either the Apple or Android devices. So for instructors, we make something called Assignment Grader. And basically what that allows you to do is download all of the submitted assignments to your tablet, either an Apple-based tablet or an Android-based tablet. And once you submit all those, or I'm sorry, download those, you can then work with those assignments offline, no matter where you're at. You can do all of your grading, your notes. You can even do a little video note feedback to the student. Then when you get back online, everything synchronizes back up again. And so then the student gets their feedback. So it's a great way of extending the program, even if you're not online at the time. It's basically offline access. Okay. Yes? Sure.
So is what you just said that I could download the student papers, I could then read Johnny's paper and make a small video saying, Johnny, I really like the way you did this, in the next paper I'd like you to do this, and then that goes to his account and he can, instead of me writing comments to him, he can just do a 30-second video of it?
Correct, that's correct. And so when you get back online, it'll all be saved, and then when you get back online, it synchronizes back up.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to.
Sure.
You, in your capabilities that you had on the last slide with the columns.
Yep.
Is there any plagiarism checking that's in this software, or does that have to be?
Yeah. Not built into our software. We integrate with Turnitin, for example, as a solution for that, but we don't create our own plagiarism checking software. And there's a couple of solutions that are out there, but it's just not something that's kind of core to what we're trying to do here, and there's great solutions out there as it is, so integrating is kind of the best approach for us. The other application, mobile application I want to make you aware of, and this is a little bit more geared towards students, is that it's called Binder, and students could download content from their course to their tablet and be able to work with that content offline. So let's say you have a digital textbook in the course, and the student can then download that, or maybe it's PDFs or PowerPoints or any type of file. The student can download those to Binder. Again, they can be offline. They can be on the bus going home and be reading that, using that content. They can also make annotations, highlights, those kinds of things. Next time they get online, it all synchronizes back up again. So tools, again, to be productive even if you're offline from the system. One other thing about Binder, and that is actually, it has become its own platform in that it allows instructors to interact with the major publishers and select the textbooks and the digital content that they want to use in their course. So we have several textbook publishers like McGraw-Hill and Cengage and others that are now building a Binder store, putting their various digital elements in there, textbooks and required readings and those kinds of things. And with Binder, instructors can now go out and evaluate those materials for like a 60-day period. If they decide that they want to have the student use those materials, within Binder, they can assign that to the students. Then the student logs into the course at the beginning of the semester. They can see what those required readings are. There's a way to include an e-commerce component so the student can buy it right off of the site, either directly from the publisher or through your student bookstore, if that's the route you want to go. And then it just downloads into the site. So we see this Binder tool becoming more and more pervasive as a way to help for fully online programs where maybe they don't have access to get to a campus and do an actual bookstore transaction. Everything can be done online now. Any questions about that? Okay. So speaking of development partners, we do work with all of the major publishers out there. This could be anything from taking their quiz banks and being able to put those into Desire to Learn and being able to choose from those quiz banks as you're creating quizzes, to much more sophisticated integrations where class enrollments from our system can automatically go into their platform and vice versa, and grades can come back and forth. So lots of new capabilities between us and those publishers. Accessibility for all students is really an important part of what we do. So when we go back to our pervasive anytime, anywhere, that also includes for all student users. So accessibility for us is not just meeting basic requirements or having somebody certify us. It's really part of our user interface right from the beginning. So as an example of our effort here, we have now been certified by the National Federation of the Blind for 3 years in a row as a gold certified provider of accessibility tools. Other providers will typically just do 1 year and say, hey, we're certified. For us, it's an ongoing process. We want to make sure that we're certified each and every year. And there's tools that are built in that make it easier for students with various disabilities. So in addition to all of these learning management system tools, or integrated learning platform as we call it, we realize that there's a lot of other challenges that schools are trying to accomplish out there. Those involve having students stay at the university for the 4 years without having to drop out, being able to complete their degree in the most efficient and most effective way, and being able to do that in a way that gets them here in 4 years and then allows them to move on to either graduate studies here or some other job or activity. So we've created a few tools to kind of help make that happen. Now these are right now either in addition to the core integrated learning platform or kind of in the process of being developed as part of that platform. One thing we make is called the Insights Student Success System. This is actually part of what I mentioned earlier, that Insights analytics product. Basically what allows your instructors to do is to go in early in a course and look for some key indicators of how that student is performing. We've built in predictive algorithms that looks at the first couple weeks of how that student is doing and looks at some key metrics like how much time are they spending in the course, what kind of grades are they getting in the course, and then allows you to dig down further for that individual student and compare them in various charts against other students. So it's a graphical interface for the instructor to kind of determine how that student is doing early and what our algorithms are predicting that student may do by the end of the course. So it gives you some time to intervene and take some corrective action.
Sorry, quick
Yes,
question.
sure.
On that last page, it almost looked like, is there capability in the system for advisors to see what students are doing in multiple courses?
Yes, absolutely. So you can see what the student is doing overall and then drill down further into specific courses or then even specific activities within a course. So there's some nice drill down capabilities.
Do students get the chance to see that?
At your choice. So if you want to give students access to it, they can. It's kind of that roles and permissions things. But if you decide you want to give access, you can do that. Okay. We've also just acquired a company in September. So this has not yet been rolled into our product, but I think we'll give you kind of a good view of where we're heading with this. The company was called Knowledge Systems, and they made a product called LEAP, L-E-A-P. LEAP is kind of short for Learning Path. So what the LEAP product does is allows the system to kind of work with the student to identify the best set of content for them to get to the best outcome through either the assessment or the learning outcomes that are being measured for that student. So think of how Google works with websites. It goes out there and does these word searches that kind of finds the best set of matches to whatever the Google search line is. It's kind of similar here. Based on what the content elements are, what the assessments are, and what the learning outcomes are for the course, the system kind of does a process of determining what are the best semantical matches here. Once a student goes through kind of a first iteration of that and takes a formative assessment, the process then kind of begins over again, but a little bit more refined. And it continues to create this process so that the student eventually gets an individualized learning path based on the content that's been selected from the instructor in a way that gets them to the best outcome in the quickest way. It's, again, one that uses predictive algorithms to kind of determine that. It's a little bit hard to describe because it is kind of a futuristic approach, but we are now planning to incorporate that technology right into our learning environment, probably by the end of 2013 or 2014 or early 2015. So it's in a kind of a developing technology, but I think important to know in terms of the product direction that we're heading in. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is a product that we've acquired from Austin Peay State University called Degree Compass. And the goal behind Degree Compass is to make it easier for students to select courses that are going to get them to their degree completion in the quickest and most efficient time. Basically what it does is, again, using these predictive algorithm tools, it looks at the current student's profile. It matches them up against other students that have successfully completed that major. And based on that, builds a set of suggestions or recommendations of the various courses in their major and in their general education courses that we think, based on the system, will get them to that major quickest. It actually provides a star rating similar to like a Netflix or an Amazon might rate a book or a movie for you based on your past performance or past purchases. Degree Compass does the same thing. So we acquired this, again, from Austin Peay State University in early 2013. It's still kind of in beta development for us in terms of a commercialized product, but just something to keep a lookout for as you're evolving your needs to go beyond just a learning management system, but really a student success and a student completion tool using all the various tools that are out there. Any questions about that?
So does that use just their academic performance in college, or does that have the ability to go and pull the academic performance from high school and everything else?
Good question. The answer is yes, it does pull from other sources like entrance exam information, transcripts from high school. And really what it does is integrates with your student information system, your degree audit system, other systems that you have where that information probably resides, and then pulls that information into Degree Compass. So it even has a tool, and actually Austin Peay uses Banner. So there are tools now that the Degree Compass product, not only does it pull information from Banner, but can then also go back, once that student has made a selection of courses, to go back into the enrollment system and actually allow them to choose that course while still within Degree Compass. Now, I want to emphasize, we're not ready to provide this to everybody today, but again, over the 2014 calendar year, this will probably be ready for full-blown rollout to all schools, or at least schools that have a certain set of information systems that we will be able to integrate with.
Is this going to be a core part to the product, or is this going to be an add-on?
This will be an add-on. So, it's, again, a solution. A lot of our solutions, we try to provide a core solution, but understand that not all schools either need it, want it, or have it as part of their immediate rollout of technology. So it will be available as an add-on system. Okay, any other questions on that? Final thing I'll leave you with before we go to the demo, and that is just some of your neighboring schools and institutions that are currently using Desire to Learn. Ohio State, they call it Carmen there, so if you have colleagues at Ohio State that say, oh, we use Carmen and we love it, that's really Desire to Learn. University of Akron actually calls it Springboard, so they've kind of branded it a little bit differently. We've actually had a fair amount of success lately with the Jesuit colleges. Canisius College, University of Scranton, just within the last 6 months or so, have joined in. One of the reasons may be that we have an agreement now with the Jesuit College and University System or Association, where we've developed special pricing for all Jesuit schools that are part of that organization. So if you decide to go with Desire to Learn, we will apply that special consortium pricing to whatever you do. Okay. Any questions before we move on to the demonstration? Okay, so let me exit out of this and let me introduce David Hulk again, who is our solutions engineer. David is based in Canada, often makes it out here with me, but scheduling just didn't allow it this time. I'm going to make David the presenter. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And David, as you begin, give us a test 1, 2, just to make sure the sound is set at the right level.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sounds good. Okay. You're on.
And the screen, you can see the screen okay as well?
Yes. Okay, yeah.
All right, sounds good. So the way we'll do this demonstration is I'll start off as a student, so someone who's taking a course named Frank Catcher. So you can see in the top right corner, I'm logged in as Frank right now. And that will give us an opportunity to walk through some different layouts of the system and basically cover the basics and some of our mobile tools as well. And then we'll log in as a user named Ferdinand, who would be a professor or an instructor, so someone who has the ability to go in and edit the content, add activities, and then do more of the building type of activities. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll go into reports and some of the built-in analytics within the system. So the first page that we see when you log in is called the organizational homepage. That's the landing page for Frank, where Frank can find general information, not only about his courses, but about the school as well. One thing to note about these pages is they're entirely customizable. So in this demonstration environment, we have some tools that people usually like to see. For example, a news widget, a courses widget. Below that, we have a calendar widget. But basically, we can set this up to be whatever you want it to be. So we can add other widgets that we have, but also we can build custom widgets. For example, we have this Twitter widget here as well. So this is a tailored homepage for Frank. So he sees his courses and calendar events tied to his courses. He might have news related to a specific department or program that he's in as well. And along the top, Frank will see the mini bar. So no matter where he is within the system, he can jump back and forth between courses or favorite his courses. And in the top right corner, he'll see his notifications set. So for discussions, course updates, content updates, messaging, he'll see a red dot directly in the top right corner. So he, as soon as it happens, will know that something has changed. From his profile, Frank can also change his profile avatar and social media connections. And also for some of those notifications, he can set his email and text message preferences for some of the key events. So that includes content being edited, grades being released, ePortfolio being shared, some of the social tools as well. Based on his own personal preferences, he can set those options either across the board or specifically for individual courses. So the way this page is laid out, the way our course pages are laid out is we have the mini bar always at the top, navigational bar with tools that we're going to use, and we'll get into some of those tools in just a bit, and then widgets in the center. And for each course or for different departments, we can change this default layout. So basically, you only use the tools that you want to use. And in some cases, for example, if you have rich media classes, or if you really want to go out of the box, we can rip this layout apart, and this is something our creative team could do, or your creative team could do, but basically build a different interface on top of it using languages like HTML, CSS, HTML5, and so we don't necessarily even have to use that layout as well. But in this demonstration, we'll be staying with the standard layout. And so if I jump into a course, I'll go into Introduction to Astronomy. We'll see in this example, the branding and the layout has changed to be astronomy based. And if we take a quick tour around this page, we'll notice that the links have changed. So this would be something that the instructor of this class has determined we want to use these tools. And the widgets have changed as well. So if we, instead now on the home page, we'll see course updates, which will tell us that we have new feedback, we have new deadlines, and the calendar events in this page will be specific to this course. So within the course, I think before we jump into the content tool and go through some of the more traditional activities, we can highlight some of the social learning and more pure virtual-based social tools that are within the environment. One to start are the discussions. So in all the courses, you can have discussions or group-based discussions within the system. Anytime you see an avatar, we can highlight over the user. So here we see Caesar, and we can see if he's online. If he had social media connections, we can see that here as well. And we can email him or message him directly from this view as well. So anytime we see an avatar, we can engage with that user directly. Within the discussions, we'll also see examples of how easy it is to post and interact with some of these tools. So in discussions, for example, we'll see the rubric before we actually post to the discussion, and when we're ready to post, we'll hit start a new thread, so we can still see the rubric while we're responding to the post. Another social tool that we'll see within the system is our Wigio. So Mark touched on this briefly. So this is our working in groups tool. This is meant to be a tool for students to do ad hoc group creation. So a teacher, well, looks like it wasn't set up correctly, but basically if a teacher or professor assigns a project, we can go into Wigio to do virtual meetings, whiteboarding sessions, we can do document sharing, we can edit and share documents together, and that allows the students to create the groups themselves within this tool here. And in addition to Wigio and discussions, we have the ePortfolio, which we'll see through the rest of the demonstration, which is a social layer that lays on top of all the courses, where Frank, as he completes activities and reflects on different content, can start archiving all his results and information here. He can share it with other users. So if we say, okay, I am learning X, we can share it with anyone else who we interacted with within our classes. And then at the end of our program, the main goal of the ePortfolio is we can have collections and presentations that go along with us when we're done at our program. So the question that we always get is, well, that's great, but what happens when they leave our school? We have an export into what we call My Desire to Learn, which is hosted by Desire to Learn, where they can take all those certified objects and results and bring it with them for the rest of their lives. So those are some of the tools that we're going to see across all the different courses that Frank's enrolled in that are more, I guess, informal learning-based activities. Within the course content itself, so the content tool in Desire to Learn is basically the main structural focus where we organize how we want to go through the content throughout the term. And so when Frank enters the content tool, he'll see his progress through all the content activities. You'll see check marks and numbers indicating what he has done and what he has left to do. And then you'll also see icons indicating the different activity types within this course. One thing, and we'll demonstrate this in just a second, that you'll also notice as you go through the content tool is the Send a Binder button. And Send a Binder is what allows you to push content to an offline application that's on your iPad or Android, or if you don't have Android or iPad, we actually have a web-based version as well, so that you can annotate, highlight, take notes, integrate with Dropbox, and push that content to your Binder app. And what you may have noticed on the homepage is we also have what's called a book list widget, so we can look for any recommended or applied books and put that on the app as well. So we have a bookstore that integrates with the environment, so the students can have their class notes, their books, their course content all on one device, and not necessarily need an internet connection to work with it. So just going back to the content tool, if we select one of these items, we'll be brought to the content viewer, which is where we display the content and activities to the student. And so this is just an example of an HTML page that's using our tools within the system. But as we click these arrows along the top, we'll be brought through the different content examples, so we can have inline discussions. So we don't actually need the discussions in the navigational bar. We can have it happen directly in line within the course. And if we just click through, we'll see the different activity types. We have Dropbox for collecting assignments, discussions, quizzing. In some cases, for example, in PDFs and Word files and PowerPoints, those will directly render within the browser. So you don't need to worry about downloading the content or worrying about people having the correct applications or plugins. We will display it directly in the viewer. Now, in terms of adaptive design, this view will actually work totally fine on like smartphones and tablets because it is an adaptive design. So items like this slider along the left-hand side, which gives us another view of the table of content, will sit, depending on your screen size, always along the left-hand side. So if I zoom in, kind of give you a look at what it would look like on a smaller screen resolution, it'll always be along the left-hand side. So it doesn't matter if we're on a tablet or smartphone, if it's lengthwise or vertical, the tools are going to fit within the screen. Beneath the content, we'll see reflections in ePortfolio. So if we're using the ePortfolio app, we can always reflect and take notes and put this into our ePortfolio. And tags will automatically be created so that we can search and find this easier after the fact. So we can say my thoughts and then add that into our ePortfolio. And what you'll see is when we're using the ePortfolio items, is all of these items become integrated with things like our Dropbox tool for assignments, or within any area where we're editing the content, we can always link back to these items. So that's a quick overview of what the student may experience. So basically, the content tool is going to be that foundation of how we're structuring the course. And then on top of that, we can start layering in some of the interactive tools, so discussions, Wikio, ePortfolio, and assignments and activities as well. In terms of tracking your own progress as a student, we have a few different views. One, we have the traditional grades view, so that Frank can see all his grades all at once in his feedback in this view. And again, he can publish this to his ePortfolio, so that will create a locked grade item, so that he can show it to potential employers as proof of the work that he's gotten. And then we also have the user progress. So for all of our activities, we're tracking what he's doing, and Frank can see an overview of how he's doing in each of these activity types. So in grades, in addition to just seeing what grade he's getting, Frank can see how that grade compares to the class. So in the Sunspot cycle assignment, we'll see the range of the class where Frank sits. So at 81.25% may sound great, but when we look at this chart, it's not as good as the rest of the class is doing. So you can get a good feeling for where you are in terms of the whole class. And then in terms of these other activities, content will show us how much time we're spending in the content, in each individual piece of content, and we'll see similar statistics for all these other activities as well.
David, before we move on, we have a question.
With just the piece on comparing yourself to other students in the class, that's obviously something that the professor can turn on or off.
The piece about the student being able to compare themselves to others in the class, is that something that either the teacher or the administrator of the system can either turn on or turn off?
Yeah, so that's it's a permission or option that we can turn off. So for obvious reasons, if you don't want students to know that, you can turn that off.
Okay, thanks.
So before we jump into the instructor role, I'll just do a quick demonstration of some of those apps that we've been talking about. So on the screen right now, you should see, this is the Binder application. So this is that note-taking device that we see. We'll see a catalog of all the notes that we've downloaded. We'll also see an option to fetch from our environments. So if we didn't have a chance to send out the documents to the Binder app, we can go ad hoc and pull them in as well. And we'll also see integrations with things like SkyDrive, Dropbox, and Google Drive as well. So we can pull in additional resources outside what's in the environment. So I can load up my Dropbox here and see all my Dropbox files and bring those in to the Binder app. And what you can do once you bring this in is it basically becomes an e-reader but focused for your studies. So items like PDFs, Excel files, HTML pages, PowerPoints, anything that's static becomes an object within this tool. And we can begin highlighting our notes, flip through the different pages, and when we highlight these notes, it's going to create an annotation itinerary, so when we come back to this document, we can immediately jump back and forth between these different pages by selecting these items. After we've annotated a document, there's also some options that allow us to integrate this out. So we can print either the annotated or non-annotated version. We can email this to anyone that we want. So if we're working with within a group work, we can share annotated documents to our group members. We can also, this is an important feature, open in, which will look for other apps within your iPad that support this function. So I can open this annotation in my iBooks or Google Drive or any other app that supports that integration. And then we can also send this back to the web connections that we've made. So I can upload this back to my Dropbox and get that somewhere else.
Okay, so all that would be taking place on your tablet, just to clarify, showing the tablet view right now.
Yeah, and there actually is a web-based version as well too, but the main benefit is that offline capability, which is on the tablet.
Okay.
Also, we have the ePortfolio app, which is just another way of adding things to your ePortfolio on the spot. So if we were in a professional development program, we can record a quick video or reflection as we see it, or start building projects around this type of scavenger hunt activities, or when you see something, take an image and upload it to your ePortfolio. And it's another way of just allowing the system to be everywhere, going back to that pervasive type of concept. And then lastly, and this will be my segue into the instructor view, but I'll just demonstrate it now while we're on mobile apps, is we have the offline assignment grader, which is both an online or offline capable tool, which allows us to download all of the assignments that have been submitted, and then evaluate those assignments within the app. And then again, we have highlighting, underlining, annotation, and we record audio and video. And then once we reconnect to the internet, we can publish that back into the environment, and the annotated document will land there. So that's a quick overview of some of those mobile tools. So right now I'll log out and log back in as an instructor. And we can go through the system and what it looks like as someone who can actually change and design within it. So if I jump back into the astronomy course, here I now have the abilities to edit and review what's going on. I will see that the layout looks almost identical, except we'll begin to see editing tools layered over some of the areas that we get to. So if we go to news and create a new news item, we'll be able to edit and add a content item here. And I'll just briefly talk about this tool that we're looking at. You've probably seen it before. This is our what you see is what you get tool. So it's basically the word processing editor for the web. Specifically with Desire to Learn, there's a few features I'll call out. One, we have the insert stuff. So this is basically your utility key for adding whatever you want within the system. So from insert stuff, we can browse our ePortfolio items. We'll get to this in a second, but our repository, so this is our archives, our learning object archives. Video notes, we can embed into video notes. CaptureCast, which is our webcast solution, which we'll demonstrate in a second, and then other third-party tools as well. So we can browse for this item and then embed it directly into the content. Another tool in addition to insert stuff is the quick links tool. So as we start building out our activities, we can always refer back to those activities and
David,
link back to them.
Hold on just a second, just want to check, you have a video streaming server that you use on campus?
ShareStream.
Okay, so ShareStream is a partner of ours, and so just as you saw some of the other video tools, you can actually see a ShareStream tool there that would bring those videos directly in.
You have other partners?
Catch word?
Yeah, so if we do a share stream integration, it would appear down below here as an item we can insert.
Another question, hold on.
So along those lines, if I'm videotaping students in a classroom in a presentation, is there any way to directly have that loaded into the Desire to Learn system so that they can see the presentations?
So-
Either through ShareStream or through Kaltura?
The question is, if the instructor is videotaping students in the classroom for some type of presentation, is there some way to automatically load that into Desire to Learn? I guess either through our capture technology or their ShareStream technology.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how ShareStream works, but it sounds like, from the integration that I've seen, it'd be, as soon as you upload it to ShareStream, it'll be based on your permissions, searchable in Desire to Learn. We're going to do a quick demonstration of Capture Central, which is our webcasting solution as well, and that would be another way of doing it too. So with Capture Central, you can capture things that are happening within a class, again, offline, and then once you're ready, you can publish it to the course, and then from there, you can determine who can see it or not. And if you don't want it to be searchable web or findable, you just make it so.
So if the student was being filmed using the capture technology, that would then go up into the web portal for capture. And it's virtually instantaneous that it would then be available to be pulled into the course, if that would be the next step. So it would either go to the web portal that can be accessed there, or if you wanted to then pull it into the course, you can do that from there.
Like an individual user, professor?
Yeah, so the uploaded video becomes a part of the Capture Central area. By default, it's only searchable by the instructor until you give the permissions or embed it somewhere for others to see.
Did that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay. We can revisit that if you want. Okay, thanks, David.
No problem. So just going back to this tool, so that WYSIWYG tool, we have insert stuff, we have insert quick links so we can link to all these different items. And other tools we'll begin to see more often are start and end dates and also due dates. And this concept that we'll come back to a bit later, we have release conditions, which allows us to specify who gets this item. And in this case, it's a news item. We can release items adaptively. This works really well in more pure online courses, and it's also a really great tool for blended as well. We can release news, which again would trigger an email or text notification for things like scores on quizzes, which can be less than or equal than or greater than. So you can send out, congratulations, you got 85% on this quiz. Or there's a lot of different options. So submitting to items, grade value received, group enrollments. When we're working with groups, we can release specific content to those groups. And it just allows you to have that positive feedback automatically happen as you go through the course. Another tool that we'll see that you might want to edit right on this homepage is the calendar tool. And then from here, we can just select any of these dates. And again, it'll open up hit create an event, the WYSIWYG editor. And perfect use case of this is using the insert stuff. We could actually embed the capture casts directly into the content. So that could include live webcast and archive webcast. So if you're doing a pure online environment, you can schedule your live webcast and embed them directly in the calendar tool. Now, before we get into the course content, maybe I'll take a bit of time to talk about Capture. So we've talked about it a few times now. Capture Central is our webcasting solution. It supports live and archive presentations. So you can see that I have a live event set up right now. Also, previous presentations will be seen ad hoc once they're uploaded here. And we can also upload videos directly into the system as well. And one of the main benefits of Capture is that when we upload videos into Capture, it transcodes automatically so it works across platforms. So iPads, iPhones, Android devices. You don't have to worry about if it's Flash or not. We take care of that. We do have a program that you can use if you don't want to connect to the internet, where we can record within the application. So if you can't connect to our servers, you can record and then upload it later. Or if you're at a different computer, you can also record directly from the web as well. So if I hit this webcam icon, I can begin presenting. And Capture supports dual screen, so you can have media aids, you can have just the screen share, and then your webcam as well. So you should see big face pop on the
There you are. Question, hold on.
Yep.
On the other end of things, in terms of like virtual office hours or an online course where I want to see what my students are doing, can they do screen sharing with the instructor, where I can see, so we just video capturing on my screen, I want to see what they're doing.
The question is, can the instructor have the students do screen capture, or can the instructor see what the student is doing, like during the virtual office hour? Screen sharing, whiteboarding, those kinds of things.
Not whiteboarding, because they'll be using
So-
other tools, and I need to see what.
Is there another question or do I answer?
Further explanation, screen sharing mostly. What they're-
Yeah, so the Capture, Capture is more of a one-to-many tool. So this is when you're doing your online lectures or even in-class lecture and you want to archive them. For the screen sharing component, Wigio would be allowed we could do that with that. Specifically, online office hours would be perfect for Wigio, so you can do drawing, screen sharing, the same type of back and forth. We also do have integrations with online rooms, which is Adobe Connect, WebEx, Microsoft Link, and a few others, where we can use those tools as well. So we have Wigio, which is free and included, but if you're also using other tools on campus, we can integrate with online rooms too.
And we just want to confirm that's for the student to be able to share with the instructor, with using Wigio, for example.
Yep. So the student back and forth sharing would be either online rooms or Wigio.
But not chat, actual screen sharing. If they're
Screen
using an
sharing.
external piece of software on their
Yep.
computer.
Wigio allows for screen sharing.
Now,
That's
if I
it.
have 10 students sharing with me, I don't want them seeing each other's. Okay, so not, a group.
Are there any other questions or should
Yeah.
I continue?
Yeah, a little clarification. If the instructor has 10 students, for example, sharing their screen with her, she would not want one student to see what the other student is doing or showing.
Cross-tech type of thing, where the instructor can see.
And they'd all be in the room at the same time?
Potentially, let's say it's a virtual office hours kind of setup.
For testing.
That, you might want to with multiple users in the room, but private screen sharing. We can look into that to see if online, that sounds like something that maybe Adobe Connect would support, but we have to look into that.
Do you use any of the synchronous communication tools like Adobe Connect or Blackboard Collaborate? Or?
Today I'm using Google Hangouts, like for helping with my microphones. I can see what they're doing, but we're just wondering in a testing situation. I need to be, they're all taking the test and
So in a testing situation, it's almost like a virtual monitor
Right.
of what they're doing. Yeah, there are some tools that do that specifically, and we integrate with those. I'm not sure that Wikio would necessarily be the tool to do that. It does provide a lot of interactive communication between students and instructors, but maybe not specifically that use case. David, the question was around what if the students are taking a test and the instructor wants to be able to view them as they're taking that test, just
Yep.
for identification purposes.
So we have a couple of, partners who we integrate with that do, they basically specialize in online proctoring. And basically we would integrate with them and they have their application, but basically you pass through their application back to our tool. And then they have a few different options where you can see the screen that's being taken, or see the screen and the webcam depending on how strict you want that proctoring to be. But we have a few partners that we integrate with that.
You mentioned the Respondus lockdown browser, but that locks you into the browser. I need students to be able to use other software, like so they can't be logged in the browser.
Right, so Respondus lockdown browser would not be an option here because we don't want to lock down their abilities to use other software. But some of this other, like Proctor software might play the right role there. So that's probably something we'll need to do a little bit more research on, but I do think that there's something called, what's the name of that Proctor software specifically? It's just called Proctor?
Examity.
Examine.
Proctor use one is another one that we work with is Examity.
So we'll have to do a little bit more research on that, but I think it's probably an integration with us rather than core integrated product or something like that. Okay. All right, David.
Okay. So now if we go back into the content tool, like I said, this is the main structure of the course. We can go through some activities on how we get content into here and how we build activities in the content tool. In the navigational bar, we have these links to quizzing, Dropbox, discussions. I just have those there so I can get to them quickly with a demonstration, but realistically, the content tool is the primary tool that we need. So once we're within the content tool, everything becomes drag and droppable as an instructor. So we can move items around, change the order. We can quickly add submodules directly on the screen. And all we have to do to edit an item in this view, or when we go to edit the object itself, is just highlight over an area, click it, and if it's editable, we can edit it on the spot. So we'll see WYSIWYGs pop open. We can edit the dates, due dates, end dates. We can add release conditions, so we can have different learning paths as they complete the activities as well, on individual topics or entire modules of content. In terms of how we can create content and bring it into the system, we can support just drag and drop from our desktop. So here I have a couple of different content pieces. We can drag that in, and the system will actually identify the type of content, so it'll know what's a video, audio, PDF file, and handle it appropriately. We can also create content once it's finished loading. We'll complete that. We can also create content within the system, and here you'll see we know it's a Word or PDF file, and we'll handle that. And we can do that by selecting Create a File, which will bring us back to what you see as the Get Editor, except in the content tool, we can actually have templates. So if you have some school branded templates, some John Carroll templates, we can just browse for it and apply it, and we can make content look really nice without actually having to do much editing. So you can just load those into the system and have a good standard across the board. And then from here, again, we can use insert stuff to browse for those webcasts or captures, additional content within the system. Also within the content tool, we'll begin seeing the integrations with some of our products, but also third parties as well. One major one is when we see add object from the LOR, that's our learning repository. And so that's repositories of content that might be stored centrally at the school. And those can be organized by different department, by different subject matter. We can add metadata and taxonomy so we can search through them. But here we have sample repository, Smithsonian, Department of Astronomy and Physics. We can also search for third-party repositories as well. We can integrate with the National Science Digital Library, basically any repository that supports open standards. This is also the tool that we frequently see integrating with library resources as well. So the library could host, basically the library would have their repository, and then these content tools searches those repositories and content too. In terms of third-party publishers, we often use this external learning tool. I don't have any set up right now, but this is where we find another area where third parties can plug in. It's often an area that publishers use. So people like Pearson, McGraw-Hill, Cengage would have an integration with us that would use this as a minimum, but also in some cases have deeper integrations with our insert stuff tool as well. And at any time we want to see what this looks like as we're building out as a student, we can always do what's called a role switch. So if I click my profile name from the top, I can view as student and preview what I've been doing within the class, and we'll basically take on the persona of a student. And now I can go through and see what I've been doing. In terms of then building activities and content around certain activities and assessments around this content, we can do that from the content tool as well. So if we select the new and add activities dropdown, we'll see the common activity types. We have discussions, assignments, quizzing, surveys. Surveys is what we've used for course evaluations. We also integrate with Class Climate, which does evaluations as well. We also will see a few others from add existing activities, which also includes links to Adobe Sessions for using that, and some other tools like self-assessments and chats. If we hit any of these items, it'll walk us through a workflow where we just add and edit the information that we need. So for this quiz, call it quiz 1, add any additional resources and media. And this view that we see is actually what the student would see, except now, just like in the previous view, we can highlight over the content and edit everything on the spot. And if we want to connect this to the gradebook, we'll just assess it and connect it to a grade item here. For objectives, if we're evaluating based on learning outcomes and learning objectives, we can also scroll a little bit further below and associate an objective to this activity as well. In terms of the quiz setup,
Hold on a second. Dave, just want to check here.
yeah.
Do folks at school use learning objectives as opposed to grade only, or the program level objectives that are being measured and monitored?
Yes.
That's moving in that direction was the quote. All right, I just wanted to see if that was a pertinent capability, but it sounds like it's moving in that direction. Okay, thank you.
And then while we're editing the quiz, we'll see the areas to add the questions. And because quizzing is one of our more flexible tools, we can configure how much time. If there's password protection, we have Response Lockdown browser integrated directly. We also have those other proctoring tools that we mentioned, time limit. And specifically for accessibility, we have advanced availability. So if users have a learning disability or if they have visual impairment, we can add additional rules for those users here as well.
I have a question.
And so we can add in all those activities.
Hold on a second, got a question.
You mentioned earlier in PowerPoint that the publishers will integrate, so you can create a quiz using their text bank.
Right.
How does that work? Do you import their question bank, or do you select a book for each course? How does that work?
Question is, how would you access a publisher's quiz bank in order to create a quiz with a desired learn?
Yeah, so generally, publishers will release the quizzing as what we call an IMS QTI compliant package. That's one way of doing it, and usually the most common way. And we would just import those when we go to the course content and the import-export. And so this is where we import any standards-based object. This is where we import quiz packages, third-party content come in here, scoring packages come in here. This is actually also where you import your Blackboard course, because they export what we use an IMS package, so we'd import that here. And once you import what would be the question pack, you would see that land in the question library for the course. So all the questions that you import would appear here.
Okay, thank you.
So we can add, I won't go through each example, but discussions, assignments, quizzing directly into that content tool from this view. And then in terms of different assessment options, discussions, for example, when we view this as instructor, we can, when we assess the topic, we can assess it either using a rubric or just manually assess it by adding a score. And when we assess the item, we're going to see all the posts from the student in that discussion directly below the assessment title. So we'll see all those posts, and then below that, the rubric, above that, the rubric, and then all the automatic feedback we've built in. For the Dropbox tool, we already showed you the assignment grader. We can also evaluate the item directly within the browser itself. And as we go through this area, you'll actually see the integration with Turnitin. So in this case, Frank has 100% categorized this item. We've checked it against the database and have seen that. We can also evaluate this item. So if you select Frank's object, we'll see that Turnitin response as we're evaluating it. And we can actually load up the document on the screen here and add audio, video, rubric feedback. And then with the Turnitin grade mark integration, we can also do a markup directly on the document too. Quizzing, I won't go into quizzing. Quizzing's pretty self-explanatory. It can be graded automatically, or questions like long answer can require a manual grading, which can also use a rubric or manual text entry. And then all of these items, if they're connected to the gradebook, will be displayed in the grades view. And so this is an alternative view that we can take a look at where if there's a submission, we can link back to that assessment directly from the gradebook. So if we go and see an icon here, we can bring us back to that evaluation tool for that object. The gradebook tool is also entirely configurable, so the color schemes, the weighting schemes, what is seen by the instructor is all configurable. We can hide columns, we can drop lowest, highest grades. It's very mature product, so the item, the tasks we're used to doing, we'll be able to do directly from the tool. And also from here, we can use other filtering capabilities to find specific users who haven't done an activity and then intervene with them from here.
Just want to remind you, David, we've got less than 10 minutes total. We want to leave a few minutes at the end for any other questions, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so I've almost done. The last thing I'll show you is just some of the reporting. So in addition to the gradebook, we can, in all of the items that we put into the content tool, beneath it, we'll see a completion summary. So we can see who's done it and filter accordingly, either by group or section activity. We can also see the entire class's progress. So it's tied into that user progress view, except now we'll see the entire class across different indicators. So we can see it, content, objectives, discussions, and grades, and we can customize which column we want to see and see an analytical view of trends in the class. And from here directly go specifically into that user's individual progress. And on top of that, all of the tools that we have contain built-in statistics. So quizzing, we can see what are the hard questions, what are the easy questions, what are the question trends, and for each question, what are some common responses. And we'll see those types of statistics and reporting tools built in each activity. So discussions, contents, rubrics, grades, all have charts like this. So I just want to make sure we have time for questions. Maybe I'll stop there and then you have a Q&A.
Question?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Breezed over class climate a few minutes ago and created links to that.
Mm-hmm.
And are those anonymous for evaluations and assessments?
Question about class climate. We just touched on that briefly as an integration. Are those anonymous feedbacks that would be provided through class climate? Or do you?
Yeah, so class climate would be anonymous. So our survey tool can support course evaluations, but it's class climate tool is built specifically for that, so it's anonymized, and then they have the reporting engine on the back end that allows you to filter by instructor, by year, and you can see that more specific information, but yes, they'd be all anonymized from the instructor view. On the back end, they're tracked somewhat, but no one would see that information.
Okay. More questions? Yes?
I was just wondering, like at the largest level, what do you feel are like the 2 or 3 things that your system offers that the competition just doesn't? Like, what do you really see as the most valuable things that you have to offer?
Okay, good question. I think one is that flexible organizational structure. So College of Business could have a totally different look and use of the system than the College of Arts and Science. The way that we're innovating more of a personalized approach through things like predictive analytics and adaptive learning, so that the system won't be a one-size-fits-all type system. It'll be really more of a specific to the individual user's needs. And then probably how all these components are integrated nicely. We call it the integrated learning platform, is just a kind of an umbrella description, but whether it's the learning environment or the ePortfolio, the learning object repository, the capture piece, all of that fits into a really nice ecosystem together. And then probably the fourth thing would be our approach to mobile. I don't know that anybody has a free, totally accessible system that is has both productivity apps for students and instructors, as well as free access to the system overall. So those would be a few things. Further questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for sitting through our presentation. Hopefully you found it useful and informative and helps you make your decision on best system. Obviously, we think we've got a great system. A lot of schools in the area agree. So if you were to go with Desire to Learn, you'd be part of a community. As a matter of fact, we have these fusion events or user conference events, and we're planning one for Ohio later this year. So obviously we have a fair amount of schools that are currently using the system in Ohio right now, but it would be a great opportunity that we provide for schools to get together and compare notes. And when we do that, we usually bring in some product managers to talk about future product direction, and even sometimes our CEO will come in for those events just to kind of hear from you and see what's going on. So hopefully we'll be able to work with you in the near future and see you at one of those events. So again, thank you.